Welcome back, everybody, to more from the Sable Eyes. I'm here today with Blake. How's it going, Blake?
I'm good, thanks, Mitch.
That's good. And we are having a look at Weezing Spread, a deck that we haven't featured a lot on the channel, if at all. And we're going to try and have a look at it today. And Blake's here because it's his baby. You reckon this is a pretty solid choice, Blake?
Yeah, I'm actually sort of just was interested in the mechanics of the card because I was a fan of its previous incarnation, Flygon from Boundaries Crossed. It's very, very similar to that card. So I was just interested to see if it had legs, and then as I was playing it, I found it more and more fun, and I found it to be better every time I made refinements. So.
And very good, and it's done quite well over the weekend at regional tournaments as well. It's seen placings in Santa Clara, and it's seen top 32 in Sydney Regional as well, so it does have legs, and this is the card, if you've not seen it before, Weezing, obviously stage 1 with 120 HP. Two things of interest to talk about. First of all, the attack Splattering Sludge. This is Flying Flip, but with 40 on the active instead of 20. So obviously you're getting that extra bonus for your DCE, and it also has the ability to Tension Gas, which means as long as this Weezing is in the active spot, then we get to put 1 damage counter on each of our opponent's basic Pokemon between turns. Doesn't seem that good, but over a long period of time, and with some of the other card combinations that we've got going, we can actually put out a lot of pressure very, very quickly with this card.
Yeah, and as we've seen from the cards like especially Shrine of Punishment, for example, damage between turns is extremely powerful because with careful calculation you can set up so that knockouts happen coming into your turn, and then you can take advantage of whatever your opponent doesn't really want to promote. They're forced into a really awkward position where they haven't really prepared for it, and then you can sort of abuse that to sort of push your advantage even further.
Yeah, so obviously it says between turns as well, so you're doing 20 damage if they keep that Weezing in the active. So it's a really, really good card, and we've built the list, obviously, to make the most of it. Let's have a look at the rest of the Pokemon. We're obviously playing a 4-4 line of those Weezing. To help us put out some extra pressure, we're also playing Tapu Koko, our classic flying flipper, 20 on everything, and it has the bonus of having free retreat, so that's a positive.
Yeah, so like the Tapu Koko fills in like two sorts of voids. So basically on the first turn when we don't have access to Weezing yet or its attack, you can substitute it with a Tapu Koko and get a Flying Flip in first. Also, there's some matchups where Psychic Resistance can come up, and in some of those scenarios, like Malamar, for example, they'll lead with a Jirachi and have Malamars on the bench. So you don't have the effect of the Tension Gas proccing on all of them, and you have something with Psychic Resistance. So you're better off just having the Tapu Koko and waiting for a chance to more proactively use Weezing's attack.
Yeah, Tapu Koko it's a good backup. It's an extra Weezing, and in those matchups where Weezing isn't as good, Koko can help us out. Then we kind of have a suite of tech Pokemon, as it were. We'll start from left to right. We've got one copy of Oranguru with Instruct. Probably not going to be using Psychic as an attack, but the ability is what we're here for. We've not got a huge amount of consistency cards in the deck, so or at least once we've got set up, and I imagine you probably end up with a pretty low hand size quite frequently.
Yeah, so Oranguru is just sort of there to flush out the consistency of the deck. We've got a lot of Ball Search, and we've got like very basic supporter lines. So once you've got your Pokemon out, just Oranguru is there just to push the boundaries a little bit so that we can get access to our special energies to make sure we keep attacking each turn.
100%. Now, we also have 2 copies of Let Loose Marshadow, another opportunity to draw some cards, and it also means that we get to shuffle our opponent's hand as well. Sometimes decks can just sit there and set up around us. Things like Zoroark can just sit with an Acerola in hand and wait till the perfect opportunity to lift their cards up. Marshadow means that they need to at least work to get those cards. They don't necessarily have everything they want every turn.
Yeah, so Marshadow helps there's 2 very specific matchups, and Marshadow is really useful. For Zoroark, just before when you really need damage to stick, or before Alolan Muck comes down. If they get their Grimer or their Ditto down, you really need to disrupt them to try and prevent that for as long as possible, so that you can keep applying a lot of pressure. Zoroark being Weezing's hardest matchup currently, but also against Pikarom. You want to disrupt Pikarom whenever they amass a large hand size, because when they're running the Lysander Labs, if they can keep replacing your Shrine of Punishment with Lysander Labs, it not only gets rid of your Shrine of Punishment, but also shuts off your spell tags.
Yeah, which is obviously another way that we're going to try and apply pressure when our Weezings get knocked out. So we want to make sure that they're available. In order to stop ourselves getting sniped, we play one copy of Bench Barrier Mew. This means that Dugong cannot run Ravage our bench and knock out all of our little dudes. And it also means that when we come up in the spread matchup, we've got a little bit of security that they might not have. But obviously Mew is seeing a lot of play in lots of decks at the moment.
Yeah, so the main reason like Mew's so important, like it makes the mirror match a little bit more sane. Look, usually it's a bit dumb, to be honest, so playing that mirror match. You basically just throwing damage counters all over the place and just seeing
what sticks,
where the dice lands, basically. Mew helps stop that a little bit, but you're both playing a couple copies of Rescue Stretcher, and if you're both playing the Mew, it doesn't stop much. But against like Zoroark, Dugong, if you don't have this Mew, this way you can force them to get out their Alolan Muck, because otherwise you can fall prey to Dugong doing 60 damage to you twice in a row and knocking out 2 Weezings in one turn. If they combine that with a Field Blower to get rid of your spell tags, it's very scary. So that's one thing we certainly have to stop.
Quite a big crippling turn, so Mew a good one in that situation. We also play a copy of Scoop Up Block Mr. Mime, so that those pesky Acer Rollers don't lift our damage off the board. We want to try and spread that damage around. It needs to stay there, and Mr. Mime is going to try and help us do that. Again, we got to look out for those Alolan Mucks though.
Yeah, so Mr. Mime is obviously for Zoroark, being one of the few decks left in format that's running those Acer Rollers or like the Scoop Up effect cards. But we want to force the Muck, because as soon as the Muck comes out, then we can counter catch it or Guzma up the Muck. We can hit it for weakness, and then we can start spreading behind the Muck, and then if they haven't benched both the Ditto and the Alolan Grimer, then we can free up a turn for all of our basic abilities, and then we can get the ball rolling. But them having a lot of Muck in play isn't a horrible thing for us, because it does make them vulnerable to such tactics. Yeah,
it means that they need to go down a specific path, and if they're going down that road, then we can prepare for it. And if they can't get rid of their damage on the field, then we've got one copy of Magical Swap Tapu Lele. We're probably never going to use Psywave. It is an option since we have Counter Energy, but Magical Swap is what we're here for, where we can move those damage counters around. It's an excellent way to clear out the end game. We also play the Psychic version over the Fairy, because in this list we're running Mysterious Treasure, and Tapu Lele is searchable since it's Psychic, so definitely a good inclusion.
Yeah, Magical Swap just sort of fixes up all the matchups where just plain spread isn't enough to get you to go the distance. Obviously, the spread alone is enough to get you over the line against Zapdos, but against like the tag teams like Reshizard and Pikarom, then you need these big Tapu Lele turns to sort of rack up all this damage that you've accumulated over the course of the game and just chuck it onto tag teams and take big swathes of prizes in one go.
100%. Couple of extra texts before we move on to our items. We've got one Larvitar here with Second Strike. Another card that is going to be very useful in the Zoroark matchup, but it's also going to be exceptionally good in our Pikarom matchup, potentially giving us an opportunity to just straight knock out a Pikarom for 3 prizes.
Yeah, this Larvitar is fantastic. It fixes up 2 of our matchups. We sort of have a tech attacker for each of the tag teams, but Larvitar also just has the bonus of also being really good against Zoroark as well as Pikarom. Yeah, you don't need to have very much damage in play before Second Strike starts taking valuable knockouts. I think it's 5 damage counters, because Second Strike does 80.
Yep.
So 160. So once there's 5 damage counters on a Zorok, Larvitar can kill it. And once there's 8 on a Pikarom, then Larvitar can kill it. If Shrine's in play, you can reduce each of those numbers by 1. So there's all sorts of crazy math, but it all works out in our favor when it comes to abusing this Larvitar.
Yeah, in the end, once you've got Shrine for a couple of turns, Weezing for a couple of turns, those big tag teams that we think are going to be out of reach are actually going to be quite knockoutable, I guess. And you mentioned we have a tech for both of them. The Frost Rotom is our tech for the Reshizard matchup. Like Larvitar, in certain conditions, this Rotom can just straight knock out our Reshizard. Frost Crush with a counter energy does 10 plus 20 for each energy attached to all of our opponent's Pokemon. Reshizard, of course, famous for attaching lots of energy. This can easily just take a straight knockout, even without our spread.
Yeah, so this card's fantastic. I feel like this card has really gone under the radar in terms of what you can do to counter Reshizard. I've seen a lot of articles which talk about water-type techs you can use and abuse to try and get around this new powerful Charizard Reshiram card. I haven't seen a single one of them mention this Frost Rotom. This Frost Crush attack, the wording on it is tremendous. It's got the same wording as the infamous Coco GX that's been played in every Lightning deck since the Lightning has become super strong, and for good reason. All of these decks like to, pretty much any matchup where a deck likes to splash down a lot of energy, Frost Rotom can come up big because it's just a lot of damage out of nowhere that they're not really expecting Spread to have access to.
Yeah, so if they're trying to sit behind a Reshizard, maybe they're not putting down a lot of other Pokemon trying to mitigate the spread damage, then Frost Rotom can just come straight out, bang, knock it out. What are you going to do about that? Very, very good option. That's all of our Pokemon for the moment. We'll run through our supporter line. We've got 4 copies of Lily. Pretty obvious for that one. We've got 3 copies of Cynthia. Shuffle Draw is going to be important. We want to make sure that we've got access to Energy and Weezing when we need them, so shuffling is always going to be good. Rather than playing the 4th Cynthia, we're opting for a Tate and Liza. We shuffle and draw 1 less card, but it also means that we give ourselves the option to switch, knowing that we also only play 1 copy of Guzma. Obviously, we're not going to try and knock things out, we're just going to spread damage. Tate and Liza probably gives us the benefit when we're stuck in the active with something that we don't want to be there.
Yeah, so typically, if you want to look through the Pokemon, the heaviest thing that we have in the deck is probably the Weezing, which we don't mind having stuck in the active, even if it's not attacking. If it's stuck in the active, it's usually attacking anyway. So, but the worst thing we could probably have stuck in the active is our Instructor and Guru, because if we're not behind on prizes for whatever reason, and that's stuck in the active, suddenly we have to find one of our copies of DC to be able to retrieve it. It can lead to some very awkward turns and us wasting a lot of resources manually retreating with one of our very few special energies that we run, which is one of the, I would consider the main lose conditions of the deck is getting stuck without access to your energy to keep applying pressure.
Yeah, so if you're in a position where you have to waste resources to get your board state into a positive situation, then and you're going to need to make sure that you manage them very, very closely as you go along, because otherwise you can find yourself in big trouble. With those supporters, it might seem like a thin line, but we're also running 4 copies of Pokegear. Pokegear kind of acts as that fail-safe, giving you the option to look at the next 7 cards and pick out a supporter that you find there. It's not always going to work out the way we want it, but most of the time we're looking for draw, and 8 out of 9 of our supporters are draw cards, so that seems fine to me. We also
combine that with the Let Loose Marshadows and the Instructor and Guru, and it draws about as well as most other decks in the format.
Yeah, we should be okay. Looking at our balls to search stuff, we've got 4 copies of Nest Ball. No Ultra Ball in this list because we don't really need it. All the cards that we probably want to be playing from hand, things like Weezing and Marshadow, are both searchable with Mysterious Treasure. So no need for Ultra Ball when we can just search them out that way. And anything else that we can't find with those 2, we can just grab with our 2 copies of Pokecoms. We've got 18 Pokemon in the deck. That's really, really high. You're more than capable of shuffling a few of those back in with Pokecoms to find the one you need. And it's also important to note that you're not going to need every single one of these Pokemon in every single matchup, so you might not need Frost Rotom when you're going up against Pikazek, so just shuffle that back in, get the things that you do need.
Yep, you can just shuffle away your techs and grab out another Coughing or another Weezing.
100%. Also, rounding out our Pokemon search, I guess, 2 copies of Rescue Stretcher means that we can chuck them back in our hand if we need them, or shuffle 3 of them from the discard pile back into our deck. We're going to be trying to put those spreading cards back in, or if we need things like Mew or Mr. Mime or whatever it is, we can chuck those in as well. We have 2 copies of Countercatcher. We're planning on falling behind, so we may as well use this card. Exceptionally powerful when we're behind. We get to pick anything we want from our opponent's field and bring it up. And like you said, Blake, lots of the time we can use this to put our opponent in awkward positions where they have things in the active they don't want to have there.
Yeah, I mean, it's been one of the most effective strategies for Spread since its introduction, so Countercatcher is a fantastic card for this. Outside of Lightning, there's not many decks in the format that doesn't like having something that is not attacking with being brought into the active. Obviously, Lightning has access to Zero Aura GX, which is kind of troublesome. This strategy won't be very effective against them, but against every other deck, Countercatcher is very effective.
Yeah, especially those mucks, those pesky little mucks. Zoroark does not like having those out there. Rounding out our cards, we've got 3 copies of Shrine of Punishment to help stack those damage counters onto GX Pokemon. When you've got a Weezing out, we get to put 2 down on things like Pikarom and Reshizard, so Shrine of Punishment, very good there. Also helps us contest the Stadium War, which is quite good, and we also run 4 copies of Spell Tag. When the Psychic Pokemon this card is attached to is knocked out, we get to put 4 damage counters on our opponent's Pokemon in any way that we like. Normally, we'll probably find ourselves stacking them up on something or trying to take a knockout, but you can put them anywhere, so you can set yourself up some nice Shrine plays or some Weezing plays to get multiple prizes on turns when you need them.
Yeah, typically with Spell Tag, you only really focus it in on one Pokemon if it's like a tech of your opponent's that's giving you trouble, like say a Bench Barrier Mew. Bench Barrier Mew with 1 tick of Weezing's ability at the end of your turn, and then 1 coming back at the end of their turn. If they knock out your Weezing with a Spell Tag attached as well as those 2, then you'll be able to knock out their Bench Barrier Mew coming back into your turn, and you'll be able to spread all over again.
So it's a pretty solid card. One of the cards that I personally forgot about when we were talking about Weezing going into our discussion, and part of the reason why it is so good is that extra acceleration of damage onto the board is pretty solid. So, tell you what, Blake, we might take this one for a bit of a test drive. What do you reckon?
Take it for a spin.
Take it for a spin. Oh, I've got to wait for my coins to come up here. Alrighty, so what matchup do we not want to be playing against?
Well, the worst matchup that the deck probably has at the moment is Zoroark, even though it's still very winnable. They've got the most tools to defeat us. Some Pikarom lists that run a very heavy Lysander Labs count can also be a bit tricky. We'll probably just go the Instructor and Guru here.
Yeah, that seems fine. None of those are good.
No, quite a poor opening hand, actually. I don't know if I've ever drawn such a poor opening hand the entire time I've played this deck, but you know what? Well, it's always the way. It's Malamar.
We're playing Ultra Malamar.
Malamar's also a bit of a tricky one, but if they're not playing field blowers or more stadiums than us, then I think we can power through.
We can potentially get there. And we've got the Pokegear here, so we don't need to shuffle draw with Tate and Liza with our opening hand. We might be able to find something else. Although Tate and Liza with the switch effect, if we can get exceptionally lucky, might be the way to go. I'm thinking here maybe like a Nest Ball for Tapu Koko, then like a let loose into an energy would be excellent. I think that's probably my best case scenario here. Getting a couple of Coughing down as well would also be pretty good. Oh no, they're just going to let loose us. This is fine.
No.
This is fine.
You hate to see it. This is usually a really good play for them, but we've started our own Guru, and we had a horrible hands.
We did. This is better. This is okay. We can play with this.
Ooh, and that's a Viridian Forest. We can use that to discard one of our cards in our hand out for an instruct.
For a bit of an instruct before we shuffle. He's going to retreat the Jirachi, get rid of the energy. We've got one.
Our opponent's had a pretty strong start though.
Yeah, and getting the Lily off of the Jirachi is a big one. But they're filling out their bench. So hopefully they make a horrible mistake.
Yeah, if they don't have the bench barrier Mew, then we're in for a pretty good time. Well, that's a good draw.
That is a very good draw. So we'll grab with a Nest Ball, probably, just looking at our accounts, probably a Coughing, I think.
Yeah.
That seems fine.
The Coughing will do us here.
We're missing 2 of our counter energy, so we know that we're going to pick those up in the prizes, which is actually quite frustrating.
That's actually okay, because there's a bit of an awkward middle ground here to start off, so...
So I'm just going to bin one of these Cynthia, so that we can draw an extra card.
If we instruct into a DC, we will probably switch.
Oh, we don't really need him.
No, we shouldn't.
No, we shouldn't. We should just shuffle.
We'll leave it for later. It might come up. There might be a Sky Scorching Light, but okay.
Oh, this is average. So the question comes: do we put the Shrine down now and then let loose, or do we just sit on this hand, knowing that we've got a Weezing for next turn?
I think we go into a Shrine and a Let Loose. We need an attachment here, because otherwise we're going to be stuck not attacking next turn. Because otherwise we won't have a good way to get Oranguru out of the active as well.
That is true. And alas,
so we have the Tate and Liza. We have the Tate and Liza.
That's true.
So what we could do is treasure away the Pokegear. It's a bit iffy. Don't go ahead. Don't do it yet.
Because I'm thinking if we get rid of it, we can get ourselves another Coughing, but we also don't give ourselves a lot of outs to anything else.
Yeah, I'm just thinking like next turn we evolve into Weezing, Tate and Liza into the Tapu Koko, and then instruct for 3, and then see what the gods give us. But
we'll wait. We'll wait and see. I think if it all goes well, it all goes well. I don't feel comfortable getting rid of that Pokegear and that treasure just yet. And the worst thing that could possibly happen is that the Coughing gets knocked out this turn, which means that we at least get to put the Koko back into the active. So
yeah,
it's not the end of the world.
We're trying to prevent this sort of hand from our opponent, considering with 8 cards in hand, we're assuming they'd have all of their Malmars ready to go.
Yeah, they'd have something to do, but hey, that's alright. Hopefully the Jirachi gets nothing and there's no supporter there, because if there's no supporter, we're feeling good.
Yeah, then we can sort of take our time.
Yeah, feel a little bit more relaxed.
The other good thing about this matchup is that Malamar is obviously weak to Psychic, so we can Guzma or counter catch up a Malamar, do 80 to it, and leave it on 10, and then we can leave it for spell tag procs before we take knockouts on them.
All right, so we're away, and we've got the DCE, so we are cooking with gas.
Beautiful. That was a mistake there. We probably should have gone into the. Oh no! The Tapu Koko is correct. They've only got 2 basics.
I'm feeling fine.
And then maybe we treasure for another Coughing and then just instruct.
Yeah, I think that's probably the way to go. Give myself a few more cards here. You never know, maybe we draw a supporter. We've at least got ourselves an attack for this turn. We've got a whole bunch of things. Oh, Pokegear, we'll see what happens. Come on, Pokegear. I got a Lily. I might play that Lily after putting the spell tag down on a Weezing.
We already used Tate and Liza.
We did too. That's true. That's for next turn.
We can chuck the spell tag on the Weezing because its ability won't get to proc if it gets Guzma killed, so we want them to disincentivize them doing that.
Yes, that's true. Tate and Liza, so confusing, man. I used it to switch. I forgot. Oh, boy, that was close.
Obviously, for our opponent, they want to find themselves a Giratina and get into that as soon as possible. Ideally for them, they probably want to see a Deoxys, because that doesn't deal damage to themselves, but a lot of these Malamar lists don't run the Deoxys.
Well, there's the Giratina, so he's in
play.
Actually
we're not too upset if that's what they resort to. How many Psychics do they have in discard? I've only seen the one
so
far.
There was 2 in there at the moment, so 2? It just comes down to what the Jirachi gets here.
So they need a Viridian Forest and a way to get out of the active, or an energy and the way to get out of the active. But ideally they're probably looking for a supporter here to get them access to both.
And Mysterious Treasure comes up, so if they do choose to go for a supporter, they will not be attacking this turn. That's a positive.
Yeah, no, I think this might be. Yep.
There it goes. There's a concede. Too
Unfortunately,
far behind.
Only finding mysterious treasures and not supporters with their bench quite full. No way to bench their actual useful attackers. And then Spread can just take over if they're not doing very effective attacks. You don't want to give Spread time.
No, you certainly do not, especially with the bench size that we just saw then. Traditionally, I know from my perspective, the way to play against Spread when you're playing Ultra Necrozma is to try and reduce the amount of Pokemon that you have on the bench so that you can't get kind of fall prey to one of those pesky Tapu Lele magical swaps. But hey, it didn't work out that time. We win the flip where we'll be going first, and it looks like we're playing against a fire deck. We might actually be able to use one of our nifty techs.
Beautiful. The perfect situation to show off Pokemon communication strength. We have a Mew, which would be largely useless in this matchup, so we'll be able to get rid of it and get ourselves a Coughing, and then let loose. Oh, they're running the Surge. Very interesting. Good information, actually.
That's a good
It means they won't be running the ability variant, so it will not be a Jirachi variant, I would say. I did not realize they mulligan that much.
3 times?
Yeah.
Alright, so we've got a couple of Tapu Koko.
I have to admit, I've completely forgot that we were going first, so...
we're living the dream here.
We're cooking with gas here.
We'll chuck that bad boy away and get myself a Coughing.
Actually...
you would have gone for something else?
No, I wanted you to scroll about one little mini scroll over so that I could see if the Frost Rotom was in deck or not.
Oh, fair enough. That's fair. I'm going to leave the Shrine in hand for the moment because I want to be able to get rid of the things that my opponent wants.
That seems fair.
And we get another opportunity to have a look for that Frost Rotom.
I'd like to see this one grab. Oh, it's actually priced.
He's not there.
It's very awkward for us. What about our energies?
Oh, our energies are looking fine.
We've got
2 in hand and 1 on the field, so we're set for energy.
We're down a counter energy, and we're down a Frost Rotom, which is important.
I feel like probably the best choice here, if not another Coughing, is just the Oranguru for security.
Yeah, it's definitely the Oranguru here. You only need 2 Coughings down at a time, in my experience.
And so we'll just leave that one there.
Yeah, because in the small chance that our opponent decides to get aggressive and go for the actually no, they can't get 4 energy down and attack on the first turn. So
they can't. But
not much to worry about, but still,
it's still the correct thing to do, to leave that energy there. And we don't want to get caught out by something sketchy like an attack that we weren't expecting them to be able to do. Maybe they have like a switch into Reshizard into GX attack and kill the energy, which would be bad. But I mean, hey.
Okay, this is fantastic. They expect the Frost Rotom, and now we have access to the Larvitar instead.
Yes, beautiful.
So
perfect.
They accidentally played right into our hands. It looks like a very awkward hand for our opponent because they've had to use a Welder to draw cards here.
Yeah, but at least they get to attach and then attach 3 with Flare Starter, so there's going to be a ton of energy on the board over there.
And they've done the very smart thing of not overbenching and just getting exactly what they need. So it looks like they want to start applying pressure with this Volcanion. So the Tapu Koko is something we want to avoid here. Oh, perfect draw here, a Shrine of Punishment.
Get rid of that. And we're actually in a position where we can just attach a DCE to a Coughing and then Lily.
Hopefully draw ourselves a Weezing because
we don't need anything else.
Because we really want to avoid, yes, excellent. Both of the cards I wanted to see, we see a Weezing and a Spell Tag.
Perfect.
So we force them to use the Snorlax if they want to take a knockout this turn, if they don't run Professor Kukui.
Yep, 100%. And I'm going to save this Nest Ball because I want them to freak out next turn when they see the little Larvitar come down. And we've got everything that we need.
Just have a look? Can I have a look at Snorlax's total HP? I believe it's 270.
Yes. So,
let's see how much damage we're going to need. It's 160. So, we're going to need quite a bit of help before we can start taking knockout with that. But, I think we've got plenty of time here with our setup.
Ooh,
it looks like our opponent did not get anything off of that Welder before 1 fire attach here. So,
alright,
it looks like we can keep attaching and keep applying pressure here.
Well, I'm almost reluctant to do anything other than just attack because our board is set up. We don't need to play any cards.
So maybe we attach the DC and just Lily for 3?
Yeah, that seems fair. Where are we going to attach it? Coughing or Coco?
Coughing. I think, considering they're running the Volcanion, I hesitate to use the Coco anymore.
That's fair. We'll just Pokecoms this Mew away, grab ourselves another Weezing. That seems fine. Look at him, he's sitting there.
Yeah, it's really important for this deck that we we have 2 Weezings out as often as possible, because when they take a knockout, when you promote the new Weezing, its ability will proc. So it'll fill in the gaps.
Yes, and good thing here, this Volcanion, even though it'll get a knockout on our Weezing this turn, will be knocked out because of that Weezing. So that's a big positive.
And I'm only realizing it now because I forgot. Oh, an Acerola! Now I'm not regretting anything anymore, so that's good. So they're going to take a knockout here. We're not going to take a knockout, which means counter energy is active. So it leaves us free to... Oh, if they don't bench the Volcanion, we can win this
Yeah,
game.
I was about to say the same thing, but he's going for the Nest Ball here.
He's going for it.
No, he didn't put anything down.
Is he going to be bold enough to just try and use the Snorlax the whole time?
That would be wild.
That would be wild.
You can see him tossing it up. He's doing it.
Oh,
okay.
Yes, he's done it. So we need to just find ourselves the energy to attack with this Larvitar, and we've won ourselves a game. So we want to promote the Coco, not the Weezing here, despite it being in our interests to abuse this Weezing ability. Oh, we got off the top.
Decks for days, mate. Never in doubt was never in doubt.
I would be very upset if I was my opponent here. If they had just played any differently that turn, they would have had a much better chance.
They would have, but hey, that's the way it goes. And the irony, of course, being that if they had to put the Reshizard down instead of the Snorlax,
we wouldn't have had an answer for it.
Then we wouldn't have been able to do anything. But there it is. Anyway, we might leave it there for the moment. If we played another game, then we'd probably end up running a bit too long. I'll get onto the list in just a second, but that was exciting, Blake.
Yeah, I mean, this is just like the fun stuff that happens with Weezing all the time. You can get into your opponent's head, and suddenly they start playing around cards that may or might not even exist in the lists, like your Water Tech or like a Mimikyu or something like that. That's often fire decks are scared of for these counter box type things. And instead they fell prey to the Larvitar, which they seem to have forgotten about.
But hey, their loss is our gain. Thanks very much, Blake, for coming along for this one.
No worries, it's my pleasure.
And thanks everyone for watching. If you like the content, please subscribe by hitting the sable eye in the middle of the screen. On the left hand side, we've got a video that YouTube thinks that you might like, and on the right hand side, we have our Unbroken Bonds it's not proxy boxing anymore. It's Unbroken Bonds deck profiles and matchups. Thanks everyone for coming along, and we'll see you all next time for more from the Sable Eyes. Bye.
Bye.